Hi, this is Julie with Beadaholique, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to bead weave a bracelet using 2-hole crescent beads, Swarovski 4mm pearls, little 3mm check glass round beads, and 15-0 seed beads. So I have 2 color variations I've already done, and I'll do a third one here in the video. And I did want to go ahead and just sprinkle some crescent beads on my table so you can really see the variety of colors available. For this particular project, like I mentioned before, you'll need the 2-hole crescent beads, the 4mm pearls, 3mm check glass beads, 15-0 seed beads, a little Elegant Elements clasp, and some FireLine beading thread. You'll also need a needle and a pair of scissors, and a stopper bead. Now a stopper bead can be any random little seed bead you have at home. So go ahead, place the stopper bead onto your needle, and pull it down towards the end of your thread. Now you'll want to leave a tail of about 18 inches because you're going to use that to attach your clasp. Go back through the stopper bead and pull your thread. Now when you do it like this, you can easily slide that stopper bead on and off. Now on my table, I've already lined up my crescent beads so that they're facing to the left. For this project, it does matter what direction the crescent beads are facing and also what hole you're going to be going through. To start, place 2 seed beads onto your needle. And slide it down to your stopper bead. Now if you look at this bracelet, you're going to be working in clusters. So think of this here as one cluster between the pearls. So we're going to be making 11 of these clusters. So now we want to pick up a crescent bead via the bottom hole, a check glass bead, another crescent, another check glass, and another crescent, and one more pearl to complete that segment. So slide it down to the base. And this is what you've got so far. So you'll want to make a total of 11 of those, just leaving off the final pearl. So let me do one more on camera, and then I'll complete the rest off camera and then show you how to then do the next row. So a crescent, a little check glass, another crescent, again via the bottom hole, another check glass, a crescent, and finally a pearl. Okay, so now I've got 2 segments and the goal is to have 11. So we finished our 11 segments minus the last pearl, and now we need to do what is essentially the center strand. So if you look here in this example, this is what we're going to be doing right here. So we're only going to be using the seed beads and the crescent beads. And I've gone ahead, I've again lined up my crescent beads, and this time they're facing the opposite direction with the crescent shape going to the right. And again, we're going to be using the bottom hole. So the beauty of 2-hole beads is they give you a lot of options on how to string them. So you see that second hole up top? We're now just going to go through it and create a little thread bridge. And we do want to make sure it's pretty tight. It's a little loose. So what you can do is just go ahead and pull that string, that thread, pull it down so they all rest against your stopper bead, and now pull. So it can be a little wobbly at this stage. So you'll just kind of have to work with it. I'll try to do it on the table so you can see what I'm doing a little bit more easily. So we're exiting that top hole on the interior side here. So we're going to pick up a little 15-0 seed bead and go through the top hole of the crescent bead next to it. And pull. We're going to pick up another seed bead. And again, go through the top hole of the crescent bead next to it. And you see how those seed beads really cause the crescent beads to come in like that? They're what's helping to create the fanned appearance. And I'm not happy with how loose this is right here. So again, I'm just going to go ahead, get my needle under that thread bridge so that I can really pull it a little tighter. This is going to help me with my tension. And now pull my thread here, and that cinched it up. So now I want to go up and pick up some crescent beads because this is going to now be the top part. So it's going to be the top fan section. So I'm going to want a crescent bead, a 15-0, a crescent bead, a 15-0, and another crescent bead. Again, picking it up via the bottom hole. And now I'm going to go through the next crescent bead. And a good way to remember when you want to do these, what essentially are the top fan sections, is when you hit the pearl. So it's between the pearl, or not between the pearl, I should say. It's between the crescent beads where the pearl is in the middle. There you can see that we've got the bottom fan and the top fan. Let me do another one. So at this point, we're just above the check glass beads, so all we need is a seed bead. So one seed bead, then go through the top hole of the next crescent bead. And then another seed bead, and the top hole of the next crescent bead. Okay, and now we're to the pearl again, so that means it's time to do another fan segment up top. So that's going to be a crescent bead, a seed bead, a crescent bead, a seed bead, and another crescent bead. Pull those guys down and go through the top hole of the next crescent bead. And pull them into place. So you're just going to keep doing this. You'll see that some of these will flip-flop, so you just go ahead and straighten them up until you reach the end of your line, and you're going to do one final segment of the top fan part. So I'll actually show you that once I go along this line. So I'll get to this point here, I'll do another little fan segment with you, and then we'll go back and do the top row. So I've got to the end of this side of the bracelet, and I want to add one more little fan of crescent beads. So it's going to be the same technique that we've been doing all along. So just a crescent, a seed bead, another crescent, a seed bead, and a crescent. And slide that down. And now we're going to jump up to the final top row. So to do that, I'm going to move my sample out of the way. So again, because these are 2-hole beads, it's really easy. We're just going to go through now that top hole. And we're going to want to work on our tension. So go ahead and pull the thread that's exiting the crescent. And there. And now we're going to want a check glass bead. They'll go through the next crescent bead via the top hole again. And another check glass. Okay, so now those are the first couple beads of the top row. And again, let me try to do this on the table so it'll be a little bit easier for you to see what's happening. All right, so now we need a pearl. And for this top row, we're only going to be using pearls and check glass beads. So no more seed beads and no more crescent beads. All right, so now 2 more check glass. So check glass, then through the next crescent bead, top hole, Another, whoops, make sure that sits right. Another check glass. And another pearl. And of course, between each of these, we're going through a crescent bead. All right, so our pattern is 2 check glass, pearl, 2 check glass, pearl. And we're going to do this all the way to the very end. And at the end, we're going to add 1 pearl and 2 seed beads. So we've reached the end of the line, and I've added that pearl and the last 2 little seed beads. So our beading is actually done, and this is what our bracelet is going to look like. So now we need to attach our clasp, and we're using a 2-strand clasp to add stability. I tried a single strand one and it just ended up flopping around. So I do recommend a 2-strand for this particular project. So what we're going to do is make sure that the clasp is facing the right direction. You don't want it upside down. So make sure it's properly oriented. Take your needle and go through one of the loops. So, and of course you want it to be the loop that's lined up with your beadwork. Now go back down through your seed beads, your pearl, and the crescent bead. And pull. Now take your thread, and this can be a little bit hard to see. I apologize for that. So remember your crescent beads have 2 holes. We're going to go back down through the second hole. And it's going to create a really discreet little thread bridge that you're not going to even see because these beads are so dark. Okay, so now we're exiting here, and we actually are trying to work our needle so that it exits right here to be able to attach the other loop of our clasp. So to do that, you're going to just jump over and go through this second hole of this crescent bead right here. And you're going to go through the check glass bead, the next crescent bead, the next check glass bead, and you're going to come out that crescent bead via this top hole. Now you're going to go through the second loop of your clasp, and now you're going to retrace your steps. Go back through the crescent bead, the check glass bead, the next crescent, the next check glass, and the next crescent. So here's your thread right here, and we're going to go through this hole of that crescent bead, which is kind of up top here at this orientation. Okay, so you're just creating a really discreet little thread bridge. So right now we're exiting the hole in this direction. Now we're going to go back through the top hole of this crescent bead, and we're going to go through the pearl and your 2 seed beads again. And because we want this to be really secure, we're going to do this whole process over again. So if you missed seeing how to do it the first time, the second time is the same way. So we're exiting those 2 seed beads, going through the hole, well, I should call it the loop on our clasp, back down through the seed beads, whoops, back down through the seed beads as well as the pearl, and the crescent bead. Go back through the second hole of the crescent bead. Okay, jump over to the crescent bead next to it and go through the top hole of it, as well as the check glass bead next to it. All the other beads between it and the clasp. Okay, go through that loop of the clasp. Okay, I accidentally put my thread through the loop. You don't want to do that. All right, so now we've essentially done 2 passes through each loop of the clasp. So we're going to go back, down through our beads again, and at this point we're going to start tying some knots. Okay, so we're going to make some really discreet little knots. So right now we're exiting. You can maybe see it a little bit better right here. So this is where our thread is exiting between that check glass bead and the crescent bead. So I'm just going to go under and through my beadwork right here. I'm going to make a loop and take my needle and go through the loop to tie a knot. And again, I'm going to do the exact same thing. But this time I'm going to go through my thread or through my loop twice with my needle. Pull down, pull tight, go through another couple beads, and I'm going to repeat. I'm going to do a couple more knots. And go through my beadwork some more. And I actually want to go a little further down the line here. I'm just retracing my steps through my beadwork. And I'm going to tie another knot. And again. Okay, and go through another bead. Just come out the back side. And now I'm going to trim my thread. Okay, so that half of the clasp is now attached, and it's nice and secure. So we're going to do the same on the other side. Let me just quickly show you how to remove your stopper bead. Just grab it and slide it off. You'll just go ahead and attach your needle to this thread and attach the clasp. And just make sure that, again, it's facing the right direction and that it's up is the proper side. So you don't want it upside down. You want that little tab up top on the same side as the nice curvature of your crescent beads. Both sides of our clasp are now attached, so I want to show you how it looks. So there's the clasp on it. And then really quickly, I want to show you a quick design tip. So all 3 of these bracelets were created using the exact same clasp, the same little gold check fire polish 3mm beads, and the same little seed beads as well. So the only colors I changed out were the crescent beads and the pearls, but you can see the design looks very different. So if you're picking your colors at home, that's a really fun, easy way to go about it, where you have a lot of different choices for the crescent beads and the pearls, and you can keep the clasp, the check glass, and the seed beads the same. So you can find all the supplies for these bracelets, as well as other 2-hole beads and tutorials on how to use them at Beadaholique.com.